All right, there's a big development coming in. This is as per reports. A US government official has told Al Jazeera that the second crew member from the downed F-15E has been recovered after a heavy firefight. The official, however, has said that the rescue operation is still in progress. And that creates a lot of questions as per these reports coming in from Al Jazeera. Let me quickly cut across to my colleague Jyotsna, who's joining me from the newsroom. Jyotsna, if you can help us break down this report coming in from Al Jazeera regarding what's taking place in Iran right now.
All right. All right, so
an official, however, has said that the rescue operation is still in progress, as reports are suggesting that a US government official has informed Al Jazeera that the second crew member from the downed F-15E has been recovered after a heavy firefight, but the rescue operation is still on. Jyotsna, if you can hear me, let's go over to you if you can take us through the breaking development.
Absolutely. As you said, the rescue operation is still in progress. Now, this missing crew, this is all reports from the Al Jazeera that has said that the missing crew member is confirmed rescue, but they said that they're not safe yet. Now, the U.S. officials, according to Al Jazeera, or what U.S. officials have said to Al Jazeera, is that the rescue team must still successfully exfiltrate from Iran and get back to safety. So the fighting is still going on, according to these reports. Now, an American F-15E was shot down over Iranian airspace, and the U.S. troops managed to rescue the pilot, according to reports. And now, amid this, the U.S. government has asked major satellite firms to withhold high-resolution imagery across a broad West Asia area of interest, prompting companies like Planet Lab to restrict access retroactively from March 9, 2026. And this is, of course, given because this whole scope of this whole recovery is, of course, important for the U.S. at this moment. Now, the scope of this blackout, it covers Iran, it covers Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, this Gulf states, U.S. bases, and active conflict zones across the region. Now, just to give you of the reactions that have been coming in, we've got this first reaction that came in from the U.S. was of the of course, Don Bacon. Now, what he said was reports of the second USAF air crew member rescued is an answer to all our prayers. I honor the bravery of our search and rescue teams and our special forces. I hope no casualties. And I salute the F-15E weapon systems officer who put their survival skills to work in a very dangerous herring situation. This is a comment coming from Don Bacon there. So what we know is that these are, and another reaction that we know of is of Elise Stefanik. Now, what the comment says, and this is of course on social media, these remarks have and first reactions have come in for this rescue, is that the breaking reports of safe rescue of F-15 WSO are profound. Relief to every American. God bless this brave service member who evaded capture in the most challenging circumstances, and God bless the special operations forces who put their lives on the line for this. And now another reaction that is coming is from Jack Murphy, who said, good news for of once, F-15 WSO recovered alive, was escaping and evading massive firefight on, and Iranians were actively looking for him in the area. This is what we know so far. Again, reports by Al Jazeera say that this is ongoing. There is an active rescue effort, but the Airman is not basically out of the Iranian territory. Now we're saying Airman because we don't even know the gender of this particular airman, so that's the term that has been used. And the U.S. rescue team is still, it needs to successfully exfiltrate them out of the country and to safety, and we have no confirmation on that has happened so far. These are just remarks coming in from a U.S., from the Congresswoman Chair of House GOP leadership, that is Elise Stefanik, who's congratulated basically this whole mission that, according to them, have rescued this second airman out of that place. But of course, as Al Jazeera reports say that this ongoing operation is still to happen, and of course it's ongoing, and we'll have to wait and see since after we get a confirmation from major leaders. Shima.
Well, those reactions are coming in, but there's silence from the White House on anything that's going on regarding the F-15, and they've been silent on this since a number of days. Jyotsna, thanks so much for getting us those details. We will be tracking this very closely as we await a final confirmation from the US or any authority on this.
breaking news just coming in. U.S. President Donald Trump has claimed that the missing crew member of the downed F-15E has been rescued. Now, this is the latest comment coming in from the U.S. President on this one missing Airman that was reported, of course, after the jet was shot down on Friday. Now, just to get more details on this, I'm turning across to my colleague Shivan Chanana, who's joining us right now. Shivan, now we know that the U.S. President has now commented on it. Could you just go through what exactly has he said for us?
Yeah, Jyotsna, it's since over an hour now we were hearing of these reports that were coming in that a rescue operation is on. They have recovered the second crew member, but the exfiltration process was yet to happen. And now we're hearing it from Trump in this effusive post that he's put out. It's quite a lengthy one, but let me quickly go over the post first before we try to break it down a little further for our viewers. The post, it starts by Donald Trump saying, "We got him." It's bold, it's caps. Let me go further. I'll read it out now. My fellow Americans, over the past several hours, the United States military pulled off one of the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. history. For one of our incredible crew member officers, who also happens to be a highly respected colonel, so he's given out the rank of the officer who has been taken in, who has been now recovered and exfiltrated. That's what the U.S. is suggesting. He's a colonel, and the gender of the officer is also now known with this post. They're safe and they're sound. This brave warrior was behind enemy lines in the treacherous mountains of Iran, being hunted down by the Iranians, who were getting closer and closer by the hour, but was never truly alone because his commander-in-chief, secretary of war, chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, and fellow warfighters were monitoring his location 24 hours a day and diligently planning for his rescue. Now, at my direction, this is what Trump says, the U.S. military sent dozens of aircraft armed with the most lethal weapons in the world to retrieve him. He sustained injuries, but he will be just fine. This miraculous search and rescue operation comes in addition to a successful rescue of another brave pilot that was done yesterday, which we did not confirm because we did not want to jeopardize our second rescue operation. This is the first time in military memory that two U.S. pilots have been rescued separately, deep in enemy territory. We will never leave an American warfighter behind. The fact that we were able to pull this off in these operations without a single American killed or even wounded just proves once again that we have achieved overwhelming air dominance and superiority over the Iranian skies. This is a moment for all Americans, Republican, Democrat, and everyone else should be proud of and united around. We truly have the best, most professional and lethal military in the history of the world. God bless America. God bless our troops. Happy Easter. So that's a big statement that has now come in from the U.S. president. Let me quickly go over a few nuances here. He does mention that the officer that was rescued, he did sustain some wounds and was injured in some aspects, and then later in the same post says nobody was killed and nobody was wounded. So there's a dichotomy there within the same statement, and this has not been an easy evacuation for the Americans. Let this be known, because even earlier the F-15 went down on Friday. Today is Sunday, and this has been going on for a while. The White House has been silent on this since the day that the jet went down. This statement makes it clear that they were deep inside enemy territory. That means the F-15 went down within Iran, in Iranian airspace. The first pilot was recovered by the U.S. within the initial hours, and then the search for the second one was on. They remained silent. Donald Trump explains here why they remained silent on it. They did not want to jeopardize their search and rescue mission. The colonel who has been recovered was their weapons service officer. He has been pulled out. Now, the earlier reports, Jyotsna, that you had also broken for us from the newsroom, they did clarify that the recovery has happened, but the exfiltration has not happened. That means a major firefight went on in this rescue operation. The second part of it, this is what Donald Trump said, that we sent in a lot of our jets armed with the most prominent weapons that they have. And that tells you what kind of exfiltration process this was. America really had to deploy major amounts of its military arsenal to recover the fallen pilot, the fallen officer, the crewman from the jet, from the F-15. So that's what we gather. This is the first statement that has now come in from the U.S. administration talking to us about how this exfiltration process came out. Now we know that they were able to pull out both the officers with wounds, is what the U.S. president says. Back to you, Jyotsna.
Absolutely, Shivan. Thank you so much for bringing all the latest. Of course, this is the confirmation we've got, and this is, of course, a very daring mission, as you mentioned, considering the fact that it was not just U.S. but also Iran who was hunting down for these officers. So thank you so much, Shivan, for joining us on the broadcast and giving all the details. Appreciate it.
All right, viewers, today is day 37 of the war, which was, as per the initial timeline, supposed to be over by now. US President Donald Trump said that Iran now has 48 hours left to cut a deal with US or face all hell. As the US and Iranian forces race to find a downed American, well, that has happened. They have rescued both pilots and both airmen. As of now, let's take a look at the latest developments that are coming in. The United States has rescued, as I mentioned, the airman whose F-15 jet was downed in Iran. The officials did not immediately provide further details on the rescue. What we know so far is a statement that has come in and a post that has come in from Donald Trump. The airman was the second member of the two-person crew of an F-15E that Iran said on Friday was brought down by its air defenses. And this is after US already proclaimed air superiority over Iran. Well, Reuters reported on Friday that the first member of the crew had been recovered. That happened soon after the jet went down. And now we've heard that the second has also been recovered. We got him, is what Donald Trump says in an effusive post. US President Donald Trump has confirmed that the missing crew member of this jet has been rescued. We got him. He also hailed the US military for pulling off what he described as the most daring search and rescue operation in US history. Trump said that the airman, who's a colonel by rank, had sustained injuries, but that he will be fine. Trump said that Iran had 48 hours now to make a deal on opening the vital Strait of Hormuz or face hell. Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform that he previously gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open up the Hormuz Strait, adding that 48 hours time is what is left. Even lesser now, since we have been reporting this since a while. And Trump further warned that all hell will rain down on Iran if it refuses to comply. More recent developments. Kuwait has said that two power and water desalination plants have been attacked by Iranian drones, resulting in significant material damage. Kuwaiti authorities confirmed that the attack rendered both power generation units out of service. Kuwait also confirmed damage to government building in Kuwait City on Saturday evening. Kuwait's military said that its air defenses are working to intercept missiles and drones as Tehran continued its campaign in the Gulf in response to US-Israeli strikes. Iran's Central Military Command has brushed aside US President Donald Trump and his threat to destroy the country's vital infrastructure if it did not accept a peace deal within 48 hours. General Ali Abdullahi Aliabadi called Trump's ultimatum a helpless, nervous, unbalanced and stupid action, quote unquote. Well, on social media, Trump is very much active. He says many of Iran's military leaders were killed in a huge strike on the Islamic Republic's capital. He said that many of Iran's military leaders who have led them have been terminated in a massive strike. In Tehran, Trump shared that the accompanying post with an undated video showing explosions lighting up a city's skyline. Iranian media reported that latest US-Israeli strikes on Iran targeted a nuclear plant, a trade terminal, a cement factory and a petrochemical hub, with a total of 5 people killed. The state media said that a strike near the Bushehr nuclear power station killed a guard but caused no damage. The UN's nuclear watchdog said no increased radiation levels had been detected. Well, Iran's military command has said that it will allow Iraqi shipping to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, despite its broader blockade of the key shipping lane at the mouth of the Gulf. Iranian military spokesperson Ibrahim Zulfagari told state television that Iraq is a brotherly country that is exempt from any restrictions imposed by the Strait of Hormuz, and these restrictions only apply to enemy countries. Israel's military, talking about what's going on the other side of the war, Israel's military has renewed strikes on the southern Lebanese city of Tyre after issuing evacuation warnings following attacks on nearby buildings that damaged a hospital. Israel has carried out strikes across Lebanon and launched a ground invasion in the south after Hezbollah entered the war in West Asia on the side of Iran on the 2nd of March. US satellite imagery company Planet Labs says that it will stop publishing high-resolution aerial pictures of the area involved in the West Asia war following a request from Trump administration. The US and Israel have conducted joint strikes across Iran since end of February rather, prompting Iran to retaliate with daily missile barrages, targeting Israel and several neighboring countries across the region.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said a crew member caught behind enemy lines after Iran shot down the F-15 fighter jet is now safe and sound after being rescued by the U.S. military. Now, the Airman was the second member of a two-person crew of an the F-15 jet that was brought down by Iranian air defenses. Now, the first member of the crew had been recovered. Now, Trump, in a social media post on Truth Social, said that the crew member, who also happens to be a colonel, is injured, but added that he will be just fine. In the same post, he hailed the U.S. military for pulling off what he described as the most daring search and rescue operations in U.S. history. In a message to the Americans, he said, and I'm quoting, "We will never leave an American warfighter behind." He said the operations prove that U.S. has achieved overwhelming air dominance and superiority over the Iranian skies. Now, furthermore, a new Fox News reports has emerged. Now, it suggests prior to locating the weapons system officer and the U.S. military's daring rescue, the CIA had first launched a deception campaign spreading word inside Iran that U.S. forces had already found him and were moving him on the ground for exfiltration out of the country. While the Iranians were confused and uncertain of what was happening, the agency used its unique, exquisite capabilities to search for and find the American airman. The WSO's exact location was shared with the Pentagon and the White House. The president ordered an immediate rescue mission, which CENTCOM executed, with CIA continuing to provide real-time information. All right, to discuss more on this, we are now being joined by Brazin Wagner. He is a research fellow at the Center for Iranian Studies, SOAS, University of London. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Of course, I'd like to begin with, of course, this big news that has come in that U.S. has finally rescued its this officer, the Airman, from Iran. Your reaction to this first?
I think it's excellent news on Easter Sunday morning, as you can imagine, speaking from London, and it would have been confirmed, which is why President Trump would not have just disseminated it. The location in southwest Iran in Kohgiliye Boyar Ahmed province is pretty inhospitable, isolated terrain, a rural area at best, and U.S. Special Forces would have entered. Details, of course, are hazy at this time and will only make its way out eventually and maybe at the end of the war, whenever it happens. But for now, I'm delighted to state that the individual has been rescued, which would have been another problem altogether, given how Iran are past masters at hostage taking and, all the rest that necessarily follows with such incidents.
And talking, of course, end of the war, U.S. President Donald Trump has said that Iran had 48 hours to make a deal on the opening the vital Strait of Hormuz. And now Iran has also warned of hell across the region. It's not just U.S. facilities anymore, but the entire region if U.S. and Israel escalate this whole conflict. Now, with such comments coming from Iran and Trump saying negotiations are still on, do you see any chance of off-ramp here?
No, I don't, as we are on air. You see, it would appear now, and things do change so fast, Jyotsna, as you can very well imagine. The Iranians have stonewalled the entire Islamabad proposal that Pakistan put forward. So now they don't wish to pursue anything at all, even the very 5 points that they furnished to DC. And one of the 5 points, as you do know, was exclusive sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, and which is actually something that strains credulity, given that maritime jurisdiction during peacetime, normalcy, was shared of the strait between Oman and Iran. So the question of Iran having exclusive sovereignty over it, never was a question. Then, as I've iterated before, Iran is a signatory but has never ratified the UN Convention of the International Law of the Sea 1982. So it cherry picks its way, but that's not something that's going to sit well with even those who are necessarily its partners across Asia, who are suffering with the Strait of Hormuz blockade. Now, what has also happened, and which has come in for immense indignation on the part of the Saudis, is the claim by Ghalibaf, Mohammad Ghalibaf, the Iranian speaker, that we are willing to accede to requests on a bilateral basis from every country in the region for letting their vessels pass. That's pretty much gatekeeping and blackmailing the world at large, including those who are necessarily your trading partners and not outright your enemies, say like the US or Israel. And to which the Saudis have pointedly remarked in the last few hours that what are we to make of such assurances from Tehran, given that Riyadh inked with Tehran a 2001 comprehensive security agreement. In January 2016, Jyotsna, the Saudi embassy was ransacked in Tehran by mobs. This is a country where ordinary civilians get shot for dissent and protests, but they had full liberty to ransack the Saudi Chancery building. Relations broke down and were suspended, as you do know. And then in 2023, Beijing went ahead and brokered a patching up. And what of it now, given that the Saudis on the eve of the war stated that we will not allow our soil to be used for attacks, which is not exactly exempted then from any of these attacks. So that is just one salient example I adduce. And the Saudis are the most important among the GCC allies in terms of size, resources, and the rest, as you can imagine. And if that's what the Saudis endure and face, can you imagine what smaller states like the UAE, Bahrain, or Kuwait must feel?
And these are, as you said, of course, that Iran has also called them brotherly nations. Let's also talk about
exactly.
Right.
And Joseph, sorry, if I might,
you may.
Pardon me for interrupting. In 2011, the Iranian deep state, contracted the Mexican drug cartel to kill Ambassador Adil al-Jubeir, the Saudi ambassador to DC at that time too. I thought I'd just point that out as well.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we were talking about Iran and its brotherly nations, but also then U.S. allies. We have the French-owned ship that has passed through the Strait of Hormuz. It is the first ship owned by a major Western European firm to go through the strait since the conflict began. And if we talk about the other countries or allies, non-European Japanese ship carrying natural gas have also made it out of the Strait of Hormuz. So do you think that the threat remains relevant when Trump is saying about these 48 hours, or do you think Iran is still resilient and would it be okay with other ships going? As they have mentioned, the Strait of Hormuz is open for all the other ships and not enemy ships, that is, of course, U.S. related or Israel.
The French vessel in question passed, to which I would like to alert one and all that Paris has tabled a resolution for opening up the blockade, a diluted draft in lieu of what Bahrain has proposed or had proposed, currently as it chairs the Security Council. And the French text does not even mention the word Iran as a belligerent party. It doesn't even mention the Islamic Republic of Iran. So much for diluting down and, quite frankly, appeasement. So maybe that has something to do with that vessel passing, and the French are pretty honed in their transactional skills. So let's leave it at that. Then you have the question of what happens next. Well, the question is, how long does Iran think it can continue this war of attrition? You see, intelligence estimates, and not just from the Pentagon and CENTCOM, but also independently assessed by, say, the Institute of Strategic Studies, London and elsewhere, have now given us to understand that a third of Iran's naval arsenal has definitely been destroyed. The Pentagon puts it at 155 vessels, which is not to say the other third we may not know of, and I concede that it could have been spirited away, or it could be damaged and we don't know with certitude. But the question is, Iran will continue this because according to its logic, if it survives, the regime survives, just the very act of survival with its back against the wall is enough for it to consider itself triumphant. But beyond that, it has nothing else to offer or, put up. 12,300 targets as of April 1st have been damaged and destroyed, both. Command and control centers, munitions depots, missile sites, weapons production and storage sites, the works.
All right, but this also comes as there is a CNN report that had just came out saying that roughly half of Iran's missile launcher is still intact, and thousands of one-way attack drones remain in Iran's arsenal despite daily pounding by U.S. and Israel. And these, of course, include they might be buried underground by strikes, but they are not destroyed.
Precisely, and that's what we need to know with greater certitude, as I just mentioned, is that this other third, as to what of it, is it buried and is waiting to see action eventually, or has it been moved elsewhere? And in the months that led up to this, Jyotsna, I do remember certain IRGC media mentions around, say, January and December, that they had moved some of their arsenal towards Sistan, Balochistan province and elsewhere in southeast Iran, as if heading towards the Pakistan border, away from where most of the launches necessarily go out to Israel, say in western Iran, that way, the Kurdish regions and at large, Hamadan province and elsewhere. So that is something to be seen and to be noted with the passage of time.
And also talking about Iranian attacks, Kuwait had just recently come out saying that 2 power and water desalination plants have been attacked by Iranian drones, resulting in significant material damage. Now, desalination plants, of course, we all know, is a lifeline of the Gulf states. Since Iran has warned of regional escalation, is there any kind of retaliation we can see from these Gulf states if there is desalination plants are targeted? Do you see any retaliation coming from there?
Not from the GCC states per se, because so far, despite immense pressure, they have held their nerve and have consistently maintained in public pronouncements. The Bahrain's Interior Ministry, for example, which very starkly said a few days ago, we emphatically refuse to be drawn into a war which we have not started. Now, that's just not taking a high moral ground, that's taking a very realist perspective and a pragmatic one. It is exercising restraint. Not that this restraint has bought them any favors from Tehran, but Bahrain and all the others have taken a collective posture that we are not raising the temperature. So ultimately, it will be incumbent upon Washington to see any further kinetic action, if it does take place in the region along the Straits, or in any one of the 7 islands or islets that the US may target for a land assault, which are still off the coast of Iran's southern littoral.
Also, there has been attacks from, let's say, Houthis in Yemen. There is, of course, now we see a 5th attack that Israel has reported. Do you think there is a potential of escalation from that side as well? Israel is already, they're waging war and attacks in Lebanon. There's also then attacks from Yemen. And of course, they're, countering the attacks coming in from Iran. How long can Israel go for?
Well, that's another important question as to how long can Israel be in open all-war season and how long can the state survive, taking that with constraints and resource budgets and the rest of it. The Houthi question is important in that it has not been entirely decapitated. So at some point that would have to be, questioned and looked into. You will also remember, that reminds me, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, on the eve of the war, when talks were still going on, had mentioned, and I think he spoke for the Muslim neighborhood at large, not just the GCC states, that at some point we need to sit down with Tehran and thrash it out once and for all, a frank, forthright discussion of its funding regional proxies, because all of them are a clear and present danger to us. Obviously, the war has upended that aspect, but the fact is, it is not just one of Mr. Trump's 15 demands that Iran cease and desist regional funding of proxies. It is something which has been upmost in the mind of all in the Arabian Peninsula and Turkey, not just Israel, obviously.
Now, President Donald Trump has said that Iran couldn't do a thing about American aircraft operating over its territory, insisting its air defenses had been significantly weakened. Of course, you've also slightly mentioned that. His Defense Minister, Secretary Pete Hegseth, had also said that the U.S. had achieved air superiority over Iran. How do you assess these comments coming in when Iran is still, even now, attacking there's been attacks in regions? In Abu Dhabi, there has been a fire in a petrochemical plant. So these are attacks that are coming in from Iran. How do you see these comments coming in from Trump and Pete Hegseth about superiority?
The superiority bit is correct, technically speaking. I mean, it has been a stunning military success, but when all is said and done. And when one tends to dilate on American losses, which many in the media do pick up, you have to realize that the US is transparent in furnishing data. We don't get information out of Iran, so we don't necessarily know what's happening there. So democracies are at a disadvantage on that aspect in any case. Yes, much is made of the two KC-35 tankers destroyed, or one AWACS at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, or the one A-10 Warthog aircraft brought down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile. But these are just random ones that you can count on one hand in the scheme of things after a month of a war. So by every parameter or yardstick, America isn't bleeding arsenal or forces, if you think about it. So on what basis do we reach the conclusion or insinuate the conclusion that the Americans are taking rapid and heavy hits? Far from it.
Right. Of course, there are 48 hours as Trump has given the ultimatum for Iran. We'll have to wait and see if what kind of escalation or de-escalation we see, if possible. Thank you so much for joining on the broadcast, Mr. Brazin, and giving your opinions on this. That was Brazin Wagner, Iranian Studies Fellow at the University of London, SOAS. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.